which brings us to the statement on school-based nursery capital grant outcomes. Secretary of State for Education, Bridget Phillipson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And with permission, I will now make a statement to update the House on the rollout of nurseries in our primary schools. This Labour government is bringing the change that families deserve. We made promises to the parents and children of this country, and not 9 months in, we are acting to deliver them. Free breakfast clubs already rolling out, the curriculum and assessment review already in full swing, children's social care, the biggest overhaul in a generation, funding for 10,000 new places for pupils with SEND, backing for up to 10,000 more apprentices to qualify, new improvement teams for our schools, a new allowance for our kinship carers. Promises made, promises kept. And here today we go further. £37 million in funding for 300 primary schools to open and expand nurseries. A big step towards delivering 3,000 nurseries for schools. A big step towards delivering childcare for parents, and a big step to delivering the best start in life for all of our children. And I want that best start in life for every child, because I want opportunity for every child. I want every child in every village, town and city across our country to grow up knowing that success belongs to them. That is the kind of country that I want to live in, the country that this Labour government wants to build. Opportunity, not just for some, but for all of our children. And to achieve that, we need to start early, before university or college, and even before schools, in the earliest years of our children's lives. Those years are fundamental to opportunity. That's where gaps in learning and development first appear, and the longer we wait, the wider they grow and the harder they are to close. That's why when I'm in schools, colleges and universities, even in those places, they agree too. The biggest chance to make an impact on our children's lives sits in those crucial early years. So that's why it's my #1 priority. If we get this right, if we set all children on the track to success, then that is where they will stay. That's why, despite the huge fiscal challenges that we inherited from the party opposite, we have chosen to invest over £8 billion in early years at the last budget. And it's why early years are a central part of the Prime Minister's plan for change, setting the target of a record share of children starting school ready to learn. And it's why today, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm announcing the 300 schools that will be delivering our first wave of new and expanded school-based nurseries. Many of these school-based nurseries will serve communities that are facing big challenges and that where there's strong evidence of need. Overall, it means up to 6,000 more nursery places for young children where they'll have the biggest impact, and most of them starting in September this year. And that's vital because that's when the final stage of the 30 hours a week childcare entitlement will kick in. Joining up with the 3- and 4-year-old offer, working parents of children from 9 months right up to the beginning of school will get 30 government-funded hours of childcare a week. And the 300 schools are just the start. 300 on the road to 3,000 school-based nurseries. We'll work with schools, voluntary and private providers, with teachers and with local partners to find and spread what works. And by the end, it will mean tens of thousands of more parents with the power to choose the hours that they want to work. And what a contrast, Madam Deputy Speaker, with the party opposite. Because what we inherited wasn't just an offer that they hadn't actually bothered to fund. It was a pledge without a plan. Places, promises, provision missing. Parents made decisions on the back of these promises. And again, I hear from parents how much they have been relying on the promises which the previous government scattered about like confetti. Across our country, this government is delivering change in months, for which the last government waited 13 years before signing a post-dated cheque. And the changes that we are bringing are changes that will give parents more control over their lives, time to choose their working hours and money back in their pockets. The last Coram report shows the effects are starting to flow through. Childcare costs for under-3s in England have halved since the expansion. But ultimately, childcare and early years education is about children. It is about launching a lifetime of learning. starting as we mean to go on. So as we roll out these school-based nurseries, we are also adding the biggest ever uplift to the early years pupil premium, closing the attainment gap and giving every child the support that they need to learn and grow. And we're supporting early years educators to build their expertise too. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, it's not just what is taught in these nurseries that counts, it's where they are too, in primary schools, and that is no accident. We are centring schools in their communities, starting early, working with the voluntary sector and private providers too, so that the move from nursery to school is a natural step, from one room to another, sometimes even in the same building. Just like St Anne's Church Academy in Weston-super-Mare, having a nursery on site means they can build stronger, longer-lasting relationships with families, and the parents feel a part of the community, so that they engage more when their child starts in the nursery and then moves into school. And when their children start reception, there are no big, scary changes, building that sense that school is where they are meant to be. And I saw that come through so powerfully this week when I went to Peterborough to visit Fulbridge Academy. Little Oak Nursery sits at the heart of the school. And when I was there, I spoke to Hannah, a working mum whose little boy Niall goes to the nursery. She told me all about the difference that Little Oak was making to her family, how her son is making friends and taking big strides in his learning, ready to join his 2 older siblings at school in September. The nursery is a big part of how Fulbridge Academy is at the centre of their community. And it's the same for free breakfast clubs. It's why we announced the 750 early adopters this year. Schools are the beating hearts of their communities, where children come together to eat, learn and grow. It's good for attendance and achievement. It's good for behaviour and belonging. It is good for children and their life chances. And that is the point, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is action for them, to give them the start that they deserve, because this is my #1 priority, built on a deep and fierce commitment to the children of this country in the first years of their lives, taking their first steps into the world. Because in our youngest children's faces, in the faces of all who work with them, you see something which for so long has been missing from our country: hope. The hope of a brighter and better future, the hope of a secure and prosperous world, the hope that tomorrow can be better than today, the hope that this is a government that is on their side. That is the future that we shape together, not face alone. That is the hope which so many people in our country have, that our best days lie ahead of us. And that is what the people of this country chose in the general election last July, when they chose hope over fear and chose a brighter tomorrow, not a bitter yesterday. And that is why I am so focused on getting on and delivering change, because it matters so much for lives now, today, not in some distant future. Early years are where futures are made, where life chances are won, where healthier societies are built, and that is the prize on offer. Our youngest generation are the first generation for whom opportunity is open to all right from the start. And I know that members from across this House will agree that is a prize worth fighting for, and I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Secretary of State, Laura Trott.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Lovely to see you too. And we welcome the announcement today from the Education Secretary, but let's be absolutely clear. The policies she's talking about represent investment of £37 million, but the government are taking away £500 million from nurseries by failing to compensate them for the national insurance increase. This is going to have a catastrophic effect on nurseries up and down the country, who are either going to be forced to close or put their prices up. And catastrophic is not my word, Madam Deputy Speaker, but that of the Early Years Alliance, following Labour's national insurance bombshell on the childcare sector. In her statement, the Education Secretary said that she inherited a pledge without a plan. What a load of nonsense, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is our plan that is delivering the expansion of funded childcare this autumn. It is our plan that she herself today confirmed has already halved costs for under threes, according to independent research. That's our plan, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it is her plan that is shutting nurseries up and down the country and will put up costs for parents. Just last week, I hosted a roundtable with some of the unsung heroes of this sector, nursery owners who were in tears, struggling with the very real decisions about whether they can keep their doors open. Madam Deputy Speaker, one of the owners shared with me that she's stopping her own salary so that she can continue to pay her staff the amount that they deserve. Shameful. Another owner, Madam Deputy Speaker, was having sleepless nights worrying about how she would provide proper care to the children she can no longer afford with staffing costs, thanks to this government's decisions. It is clearly absurd for the government to ask the sector to absorb the increases of national insurance while keeping the fees the same. The consequences of this are entirely predictable. They will either have to close or put up their prices. A recent survey from the Early Years Alliance said that, sadly, around 400 nurseries they spoke to may have to close due to this government's jobs tax. This is what the Education Secretary's #1 priority looks like. And parents will lose out too. According to the National Day Nurseries Association, increases to national insurance contribution will force nurseries to raise their fees by 10%. These are the obvious consequences of this government's decisions. So, will the Education Secretary finally admit today how much the jobs tax is costing the childcare sector?
What is it?
Will she monitor the impact of closures thanks to her jobs tax on childcare availability? And on the specifics of her announcement today, can she confirm the locations of the schools-based nurseries and how they were chosen? Is it on the basis of surplus primary places, or are they in areas where we need more childcare provision? If it's the latter, how were they identified? These nurseries will be school-paced, so is it her intention that they will mimic the school timetable, or will they be year-round provision and longer than the school day? And will these school-based nurseries be compensated for the impact of the jobs tax? And if so, what will she do to address the inequity that will cause with other providers? As the Early Years Alliance has said today, if the government is truly serious about breaking down barriers to opportunity, it must come to the realisation that increasing school-based provision can only ever be one piece of the puzzle. Failing to recognise this will simply mean that more families lose out. They are right, Madam Deputy Speaker. Under this government, more families will lose out. While I welcome the announcement, the reality is that Labour's decisions are making childcare more expensive and harder to find, and hard-working families will bear the brunt of this government's failure. It is time for the Education Secretary to stop making broken promises and actually make early years her #1 priority.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It must be profoundly draining for the right honourable lady to come to the chamber when faced with such good news, to bring such studied, forced negativity every single time. Madam Deputy Speaker, 6 weeks ago, I was in front of this House delivering the news that we are supporting hundreds of schools across our country to open free breakfast clubs. We got much of the same then, this studied, forced negativity. And today, not 9 months into this government, we are beginning the rollout of school-based nurseries, which we have promised to the people of this country. Speaking of visits, the honourable gentleman should go and visit the school-based nursery that will shortly be opening in his own constituency. Because never do I hear from members opposite they'll be visiting these nurseries or visiting the breakfast clubs. Maybe they could take some time out of their busy schedules to go and do precisely that. Madam Deputy Speaker, the only priority that they have is to bring back tax breaks for private schools, taking away resources from our state schools. That's the one idea that they have, the one idea that they have. Their idea of fresh thinking is to spend the money they didn't raise on plans they didn't make. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, on the questions the right honourable lady asks, we are investing £8 billion in expanding early years entitlements, alongside doubling the early years pupil premium, alongside a £75 million expansion grant and alongside compensation for school-based nurseries too. Madam Deputy Speaker, the contrast with this government and the party opposite is like night and day. I am proud that at the Department for Education, under a Labour government, it is week in, week out the Department for Hope. The hope of a brighter and better future for our children and our country. Free breakfast clubs, a cutting-edge curriculum for all of our children, the biggest overhaul of children's social care for a generation, funding for up to 10,000 new school places for children with SEND, backing up to 10,000 more apprentices to qualify, new improvement teams in our schools, a new allowance for kinship carers, new support for expanding foster care. That, Madam Deputy Speaker, is the difference between this Labour government and the party opposite. We are the party of hope, and if their recent leadership contest is anything to go by, they can't decide if they're the party of fear or the party of despair.
Amanda Martin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Early years was another strand of education decimated by the last government. And as a former teacher, mum and now an MP, although the benches opposite have not valued this sector, I know the value it plays for children and families in our communities. Madam Deputy Speaker, although in Portsmouth we do not have one of the 300 nurseries announced in today's first wave, I commend the government for this initiative. I also want to take this opportunity to commend and praise all those who work in this sector and provide opportunities for the young people in my city and to thank them for the fantastic work. I also want to take the opportunity to ask the Secretary of State to give an update to the House to delivering plans for the September 2025 childcare expansion and explain how she expects to benefit, how parents expect to benefit from the 30 hours rollout across those fabulous nurseries in my city.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend who, through her background and wealth of experience in education, brings real expertise to this place. Through the expansion that we are rolling out this year, parents will see considerable savings, but crucially it will make sure that all of our children get the best possible start in life. And whilst I recognise her disappointment that her own constituency didn't benefit this time around, I note that Portsmouth South has secured a school-based nursery this time around. And of course, this is only phase one of what will be a wider rollout as time progresses.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Munira Wilson. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Access to flexible, high-quality early years provision gives children the start they deserve, parents the choice they need to live their lives, and it's one of the best possible investments we can make in the future of our country. So for those families living in childcare deserts left by the previous Conservative government, today's announcement will be welcome news, and I welcome the sorely needed uplift in early years pupil premium. But school-based nurseries can only ever be part of the puzzle. We will never fix the crisis in early years without fixing the deep problems facing private and charitable providers. They deliver the vast bulk of the government's free entitlement, and yet they face some of the toughest challenges in making ends meet. The government's national insurance hike, their failure to ensure rates actually cover delivery costs, and their damaging guidance to local authority on funding agreements, which has come into effect this week, means that many are struggling to stay afloat. And we've already heard the Early Years Alliance survey found that 4 in 10 said they would reduce their number of funded places for 3- and 4-year-olds in the next year. 94% said they would be forced to raise their fees for parents for non-funded hours. Almost a third said they are likely to permanently close. How, can the Secretary of State tell me, is that extending choice for parents? Building Blocks Nursery in Teddington in my constituency is now operating at a loss and faces some incredibly painful decisions which will hurt parents, children and staff. So while I welcome today's announcement, Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to ask the Secretary of State, will she commit to an urgent review of the rates paid for free entitlements to ensure they cover delivery costs? Will she finally take this opportunity to recognise the deep damage that the national insurance hike is doing and ensure that early years providers are exempted? And finally, will she look again at the damaging guidance issued by her department on charging and funding agreements? Secretary of State.
I'm grateful to the Honourable Lady. Like her, I pay tribute to the big range of providers who play a crucial role in supporting our children's early education. That does, of course, extend to private voluntary providers and also childminders who are a crucial part of the sector. The announcement that we're making today around school-based nurseries is designed to deal with many of the challenges that the Honourable Lady identifies around childcare deserts left behind by the party opposite. We also know that school-based providers have a greater share of the market in more deprived areas, and 34% of those announced today will be serving disadvantaged communities. Alongside this, I do note that she welcomes the biggest ever uplift that we have secured in the early years pupil premium that will make a big difference to the life chances of children from more disadvantaged backgrounds. Where it comes to the rates, of course, we will always continue to keep those under review. In terms of the guidance, she asks about the charging guidance that has been issued. I do believe it is important that parents have a greater degree of transparency where it comes to charging and fees, and where they are able to exercise greater choice about what is being offered to them. I do believe that that is the right approach, not least as we move towards a system where the vast bulk of childcare is government-backed.
Peter Dowd.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I've actually seen more Tory MPs changing a light bulb than there are in the chamber today. And I welcome the statement from the Secretary of State, because one of the schools in my constituency, which is a very good school, Thomas Gray, also welcomes it. So thank you very much, Secretary of State. And would she, and the parents' children do a fantastic job there. So would she agree with me, quite simply, that actions speak louder than the many words the opposition say?
Secretary of State.
I do agree with my right honourable friend, and like him I pay tribute to the amazing staff working right across education in our schools and nurseries for the vital work that they do.
Sir Julian Lewis.
I like the Right Honourable Lady, and I really enjoyed her sunlit upland speech. Anyone would think there was a leadership contest on in the Labour Party. But I didn't quite hear the answer to my right honourable friend's question about the way in which the increase in national insurance contributions is going to hit all nurseries all at once, whereas what we're getting at the moment is an initial tranche of 300 out of an intended 3,000 new arrangements for her announcement to be fulfilled. Over how long a period does she expect to get from 300 to 3,000?
Secretary of State.
I'm glad the right honourable gentleman likes a bit of hope and optimism. I think we could all do with a bit of hope and optimism in the current world. I tell him the leadership contest that I'm really looking forward to is the one that we're going to have very soon in his own party. I'm really looking forward to that one. I think it'll be a treat for all of us in this House. He asked some serious, although I hope it doesn't happen because I'd much prefer things to carry on just as they are. I note the questions that the honourable gentleman asks. What I would say is that we have secured an extra £2 billion at the budget, taking that total to £8 billion for early years entitlements. In addition to that, a £75 million expansion grant, compensation for public sector employers, and alongside that, the biggest ever uplift in the early years pupil premium. We are working very closely with the sector in order to deliver the places and the staff that are required, and will continue to do so in the months ahead. In answer to the question, this is the first phase, and we will roll out the 3,000 over the course of this Parliament.
Katie White. Speaker, can I warmly welcome the refocusing on early years from this government, and can I welcome the school-based nursery announcements today. Particularly, I'm excited about the one at Tranmere Park Primary in Guiseley in my constituency. Can I ask the Secretary of State, how many children do we think will be affected by this announcement, and how many parents are going to be benefiting from it as well? Secretary of State.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and I look forward to the extra places that will be available in her constituency to serve local families. What we're setting out today will create 6,000 new childcare places, most of which we expect to be available from September 2025. So we are moving rapidly to support schools to put in place the spaces for children that we know are required.
Manuela Perteghella.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And behind capital funding, what gives children the best start in life is actually the people. So early year practitioners, teachers, teaching assistants, and the early year sector is struggling with a crisis in recruitment and retention, especially in rural areas like my constituency of Stratford-on-Avon. and this leads to fewer places for children and higher costs for families. So what steps is the government taking to address the lack of resources, skills and experience in schools and other early year sectors for delivering high quality education to under 3s?
Secretary of State.
I agree with the Honourable Lady that it is the brilliant people working in early years education who make the biggest difference to our children's life chances. Of course, we need to put the capital in place to create the physical provision, but it is the people that deliver it that matter the most. And I know she brings expertise to this House. I agree that there is more to do in terms of supporting the workforce. We have already taken important steps to support the sector to recruit and retain more staff ahead of the final phase of the rollout. We have also recently introduced an experience-based route to working in the sector at level 3, and also published the Early Years Teacher Degree Apprenticeship Standard, a new undergraduate route to early years teacher status. But we'll be setting out more details later this year as to wider reform, including looking at the questions she raises around workforce.
Grahame Morris.
Thank you very much. I warmly welcome this statement from my right honourable friend and neighbour, and I particularly welcome that Houghton Primary School in my constituency, which is one of the most disadvantaged communities, not just in the county but in the country, and it's tremendous news. Can the Minister outline the government's timetable and commit to expanding this scheme still further, so that parents across my constituency and others can look forward to an improvement in childcare provision?
Secretary of State.
I join my honourable friend in sending my best wishes to the staff at Houghton Primary School and recognise the important work that they do supporting families and children from more disadvantaged backgrounds. This is an important first step in the government's ambitious plan for change and breaking that link between background and success, and making sure that a record proportion of children start school ready to learn. So this is the first phase of what we intend to do, but there is more to come right throughout this Parliament.
Julian Lopez.
Deputy Speaker, on Friday I met 20 incredible women running nurseries and preschools in Havering. They contacted me because they are in utter crisis. Business rates, national insurance and wage bills are all rising, while the government caps what they're allowed to charge and then doesn't cover their costs to cover the free childcare hours being offered. Fees are going up and nurseries are now at risk of mass closure. The Education Secretary is driving private nurseries to the brink while not providing enough school-based ones to fill that gap. And I'm afraid her talk of hope is absolutely delusional. And as a parent with 2 small children who speaks regularly to the women running these nurseries, to watch those Labour backbenchers jeering the Shadow Secretary of State for asking questions is absolutely disgusting. So what urgent action is the Secretary of State taking? What urgent action is the Secretary of State taking to prevent a meltdown in childcare that's going to affect working families across this country?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I too speak to early years providers, schools, nurseries, childminders right across our country on a regular basis, unlike the front bench opposite, who seem to spend most of their time complaining about announcements that this Labour government is making. And I pay tribute to the early years workforce and the staff in her constituency too for the important work that they are doing. As I have said on in a number of answers to questions, we have set out £8 billion worth of funding. Alongside that, the biggest ever uplift to the early years pupil premium and a £75 million expansion grant to create the places that are required. And that is on top of the £37 million of capital funding that I'm announcing today.
Natasha Irons.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I welcome this government's continued opportunity to breaking down barriers to opportunity, and can I welcome the investment in the nurseries at Monk's Orchard Primary School and Fairchilds Primary School in my constituency. When I visited Fairchilds earlier in the year, I know that this money will go to very good use. So does the Secretary of State agree with me that accessible childcare is essential support for all families, but can she also outline how today's announcement will help to boost household incomes?
Secretary of State.
Absolutely, and I'm delighted that my honourable friend has been able to see it firsthand in her constituency in Croydon the impact that this will make to families. This will support us in ensuring that a record proportion of children arrive at school ready to learn, and this will make a significant difference in supporting families and child development. But critically, as she identifies, this will also put more money back directly into parents' pockets. £7,500 is the figure, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Helen Maguire.
Thank
you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I welcome the Government's announcement today. But not every parent needs a full childcare place. Many just need somewhere to go with their child, especially in the early months, as parenting can be an isolating and overwhelming experience. So what is the Government doing to support community-based options like 1 o'clock clubs and the Sure Start centres, which provide vital spaces for parents and children alike?
I agree about the importance of family support services, especially for our youngest children. And the Honourable Lady mentioned Sure Start. That was a proud achievement of the last Labour government. And I have to say, it was when her party were in coalition with the Conservatives that we saw Sure Start centres close right across the country. But she makes a fair point about the support that is required in those early years, and that's why we are doing more and will do more in the months ahead to make sure that whilst earlier access to early education is a critical part of what many families want to see, alongside that access to high quality health visiting, alongside access to speech and language support, community provision too is critical, and that's why I'm working very closely with the Health Secretary to ensure that all families have got good access to both education, health and care services too.
Damien Egan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to express my gratitude and welcome this news today. We've got 2 new nurseries that will be opening in Bristol North East, the Tyning School in Staple Hill and Avanti Gardens in Fish Ponds. Both areas where we've got lots of young families but not enough nursery provision. So I'd just like to ask the Secretary of State if she can reassure other families in Bristol North East and across the country that this is just the start, and under a Labour government we'll see lots more nursery places opening.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. Parents in his constituency in Bristol North East will be able to benefit now from the expansion of school-based nurseries, but this is just the start. And alongside the expansion that we're setting out in primary schools, we are also working very closely with private and voluntary providers and with childminders to deliver the places that families in his constituency and across the country were promised by the party opposite, but this Labour government will deliver.
Alison Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Emma, who runs a nursery in the small village of Sayers Common in my Mid-Sussex constituency, wrote to me recently about the impact of national insurance rises. I recognise that this announcement today will focus upon really deprived areas, and in West Sussex I can see that there are 2 primary schools in Crawley in particular. That's a town with proper deprivation, but deprivation also exists in rural areas. I'm worried that this announcement is giving with one hand into deprived urban areas but taking away by hammering nurseries with increased national insurance contributions in our rural villages.
Secretary of State.
I can assure the Honourable Lady that the list of those schools announced today cover constituencies the length and breadth of our country, serving constituencies both urban and rural. And I do recognise the question that she raises around ensuring there is good, adequate provision in our rural communities as well. And if she wants to share Emma's letter and experiences with me, I'd be happy to respond.
Mary Glindon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I'd like to thank the Secretary of State for investing in Battle Hill Primary School in the ward where I live and where I was proud to be a school governor for 20 years. Does she agree with me that investing in nurseries in deprived areas like Battle Hill is essential to very young children to get a good start to their education journey?
I agree with my honourable friend. It is where we will make the biggest difference to children's life chances, because all of the evidence is clear that where gaps open up early, they endure into the long run, and it has a lasting impact on children's ability to do well at school, to get good GCSEs and actually their earnings potential into the future. And I pay tribute to my honourable friend for the work that she has done over many years to support her community, including as a school governor.
Vicky Slade.
Speaker, whilst I too are really excited about these opportunities for some communities, I am really concerned about the growing gap between the school-based nurseries and community-based ones. Settings like Cuddles, Nature Nursery and Trailway Tots in my constituency of Mid Dorset North Pool. When they have written to ministers to express their concerns, they've often been encouraged to apply for small business rate relief. But given the space standards, this simply doesn't apply. The average early year setting for 23-24 was 21,000, so they simply can't apply because of the standards required by the Education Service. In Wales and Scotland, nurseries are exempt from business rates and schools have it factored into their funding formula. So how are we going to make sure that community settings benefit, and that we're not just seeing children transferred, toddlers transferring into these school settings and closing other settings.
True state.
If the Honourable Lady would like to write and share further information, I'm sure my honourable friend, the Minister, would be happy to respond to the questions that she raises. In terms of today's announcement, just to give her some reassurance, 27 of the schools that will be receiving funding will be in a partnership with a private or voluntary early years provider on a school site. But there are important partnerships that can be done in that manner. And alongside that, many of the providers that will be delivering that service that we're announcing today will be doing so around the school day as well. Many schools will ensure that there is provision throughout the year, but also at the start and the end of the school day too, often delivered in partnership with private and voluntary providers.
Jenny Riddle-Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. 4 schools in Suffolk will benefit from today's announcement, and 2 of those schools are in my constituency of Suffolk Coastal. So I'm delighted that Raydon Primary School and Waldring Primary School will benefit from this. Does the Minister agree with me that this new scheme will directly benefit rural constituencies like Suffolk Coastal, where nursery provision is even more challenging to access for families and for working families than our urban neighbours?
State. My honourable friend raises an important point, and I'm delighted to hear about the impact this will make in her constituency of Suffolk Coastal and across Suffolk. We do believe that in rural communities there is an important role for school-based provision in expanding early years opportunities. Where we already have schools right at the heart of our communities, this announcement today will allow for further provision, creating early years places, so support for children and for families, but crucially an important step in supporting child development as well.
Dyke.
Deputy Speaker, I welcome the announcement today because Carrie Mallet Church of England School in Glastonbury and Somerton was successful in this round of funding and can expand their early years provision. But there are many early years providers like Haswick Moor Childcare in Barrington that face significant funding challenges. So given that more than 3/4 of entitlement places are provided by private, voluntary or independent nurseries, why are these not more central to expansion plans as they continue to face the nightmare of employment national insurance contributions, price rises and, sadly, risk of closure?
True state.
Madam Deputy Speaker, they are central to our plans and they have a critical role to play in supporting children and families and delivering on the rollout. But what I'm also keen to stress, Madam Deputy Speaker, is that school-based nurseries also have an important role too, supporting children from more disadvantaged communities where they already have a higher proportion of the market share. We think that can be expanded further in order to provide really high quality early years provision, working together with private, voluntary and independent providers.
Matt Rodder.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I pay tribute to the early years workforce. I would like to strongly support the Secretary of State's announcement today, and indeed the way in which it builds on other announcements made recently by her and her department. Could she say a little bit more about the benefits, particularly to the most disadvantaged children, including those who might have English as a second language?
Secretary of State.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. We know from all of the evidence that children from the most disadvantaged backgrounds have the most to gain from high quality early years education. That's why today's announcement will allow us to provide more places for children and for families, alongside the expansion and the big uplift in the early years pupil premium, again determined to make sure that children from more disadvantaged backgrounds are able to take up places where it comes to childcare.
Paul Kohler.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Secretary of State's announcement today, in particular the increased funding. However, the Government needs to address problems funding nursery provision in the private sector as well. Castle Kindergarten in my constituency has written to me about how new restrictions on what nurseries can charge parents to bridge the gap between government funding and the actual costs of childcare services are placing most private providers in a precarious position. A recent article in The Times highlighted that nearly 60% of childcare providers plan to limit the number of government-funded places due to these restrictions. So can the Secretary of State meet with me and my constituents to discuss this issue?
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend, the Minister, will be happy to meet with the honourable gentleman to discuss this further. Where it comes to charging and guidance, I would just say that I do believe it is important that parents also have transparency around what they are being charged and what they're being charged for, especially where it comes to accessing government-backed provision. I do think that is an important principle. In terms of the funding, as I've set out already to this House, we have increased the early years pupil premium by 45%, Alongside that, the £75 million expansion grant. And just this year, Madam Deputy Speaker, to give one example, the rate for under 2s has increased on average by 3.4%.
Sally Jameson.
I welcome today's announcement of capital funding, especially to Arnthorpe's Shorewood Academy in my constituency. So can the Secretary of State confirm what revenue funding these nurseries will also receive as a result of today's announcement?
Secretary of State.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. The investment in her constituency will allow parents to take up the offer around expanded childcare and entitlements. We will make sure that the places are available for parents, and eligible parents will be able to access the entitlements that we are expanding and rolling out with the £8 billion of investment that we announced at the budget.
Callum Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Secretary of State for her statement. I warmly welcome the inclusion of Great Horwood Church of England School in their first round of funding. The school's head teacher, Paula Shaw, like every school leader across Buckinghamshire, Milton Keynes and across the country, is working tirelessly to ensure that every child and their family has the opportunity to thrive. So does my right honourable friend agree with me that it is vital that that parents in both urban and rural communities never have to choose between their family and their job?
Secretary of State.
I agree with my honourable friend, and I pay tribute to Paula Shaw and the team for all of the work that they are doing to support children and families. We were delighted that so many schools came forward to apply to take part in this first phase. Demand far outstripped supply, so we will be returning to this. But I'm delighted that Paula and her team felt able to take part in this and see the benefits that the extra places will bring to his constituents.
Paul Foster.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, what has been a game-changing announcement today for my community in South Ribble. Not only has Runshaw College in Leyland been awarded £1.8 million through the Higher Education Capital Improvement Funds today, but Northbrook Primary Academy in Leyland and Longton Primary School have both been included in the provision of the school-based nurseries, and I'm absolutely delighted, and I thank ministers. Does the Secretary of State agree this is both offering a huge opportunity now for the development of our young children, but also putting large sums of money back in the pockets of working people? We promised, we delivered, and that's why those benches are empty. Thank you.
Secretary of State.
Madam Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend is a brilliant champion for the people of South Ribble, and it's a testament to him and his hard work that he continues to make the case for investment. I would say alongside that, in addition to putting more money back into parents' pockets through our breakfast clubs, through rolling out primary-based nurseries, we are also making sure that all of our children get a brilliant start in life. I know he is as passionate as I am about ensuring that we break that link between background and success, that where you're from doesn't determine what you can go on to achieve.
Ian Lavery.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm absolutely delighted with today's announcement that the fantastic Ringway Primary School in my constituency in Stakeford will be amongst the first in the country to have to host a school-based nursery. This, combined with a much-needed and long-in-the-planning rebuild of the school facilities, will have a huge impact, an immeasurable impact on the life chances of young people in my area. Does my honourable friend agree with me that investments of this nature, mainly in socially deprived areas, will be of huge importance, and will she commit to rolling out further such schemes in my patch as soon as possible?
Secretary of State.
Madam Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend can be assured that where the Early Adopters Breakfast Clubs programme was just the start of a national rollout, to give one example, and I'm delighted that Ringway in his constituency are part of the first phase of our primary-based nurseries, school-based nurseries programme, and absolutely we are determined to ensure that there is more provision right across our country. In terms of those announced today, 34% will be serving communities that experience disadvantage. It is important that we ensure that all families right across our country are able to take up childcare and early years provision, and it's critical that we deliver those places, and that's why today's announcement of £37 million of capital investment, including in his constituency, will be a critical part of that.
Chris Vince.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Secretary of State for her statement today. I had the opportunity to visit Durand's primary school in my constituency only last week and saw the incredible work they were doing, supporting young people and showing them the value of having community pride and also the importance of oracy. And I have to say, they gave their local MP a very good drilling. And I'm delighted that Durand's will be one of the 300 schools to deliver on our pledge of a new school-based surgery. Can I ask the Secretary of State how this will benefit children and parents in my constituency and add to my honourable friend's pledge ask for more in Harlow.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I join with my honourable friend in paying tribute to the team at Gerrans for their amazing work in giving our children the best start in life, and I'm delighted that they were able to bid to take part in this scheme. The announcements that I'm setting out today and the announcements that we have made across government are putting more money back into parents' pockets, but also making sure that all of our children get a brilliant start in life, alongside giving parents extra choices where it comes to the working hours that best fit their family circumstances.
Luke Akers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Secretary of State's announcement that 7 new school-based nurseries will be established in County Durham, including 1 at Bloemfontein Primary School in my constituency. The head teacher there has said this will transform unused space at the school and help address the current shortage of nursery spaces in our area. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that parents in Craghead and beyond in North Durham will benefit from cheaper childcare through these new school-based nurseries?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. Parents right across County Durham, as he sets out, will be able to benefit from higher quality, more available and more affordable childcare. We're putting money back into parents' pockets, but we are also providing the places that are required across our country, and that includes in communities that we know have the most to gain from high quality early years provision. We know that it is children from more disadvantaged backgrounds who make the greatest gain when they can access early years education, and that is the difference that this Labour government is making.
Deirdre Costigan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Secretary of State for today's announcement, which includes funding for more nursery places at Allenby Primary School in Ealing Southall, saving local families an average of £7,500 a year in childcare costs. Does she agree that, added to yesterday's increase in the national living wage, which will see £1,400 added to 3 million people's pay packets, that this is a clear evidence of Labour delivering on our promise to make work pay?
I agree with my honourable friend, and I join her in sending my best wishes to Allenby, who are taking part in our first phase. She is right that this is the difference a Labour government is making, supporting working families, putting more money back into their pockets, the record pay rise that was delivered yesterday, but alongside that, a crucial focus on making sure that in the early years, our children get all of the support that they deserve to break that link between background and success.
Terry Jeremy.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Swaffham is a small market town in my rural South West Norfolk constituency. It's seen significant house building over the last few years, so every time I go, they are keen to talk about the impact of childcare and the lack of spaces, which is why I'm so pleased that the Swaffham Church of England Primary Academy is being funded as part of this scheme. Can I warmly invite the Secretary of State to Swaffham to see what an impact, a positive impact, this policy is having on a rural community like mine?
Secretary of State.
My honourable friend raises an important point, which is that where we see housing development and where we see changes taking place, we ensure that we've got high quality childcare and early years provision running alongside that. And as a part of that process, through the bidding that schools were able to take part in, we did consider questions around local need, and I'm delighted that Swaffham will be taking part. But either I or my honourable friend will be happy to try and visit to see the provision, perhaps when it's up and running.
Jodie Gosling.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I cannot be more pleased to welcome this news today. As a previous nursery manager, I understand the need to ensure that all children have the very best start. I remember the sense of abandonment when Short Start, health visitors and school nurses were retracted from our community provision, and I, like many others, have had to face salary cuts to myself and salary sacrifices to keep our nursery doors open, not now, but under the previous government in the last 8 years. On Friday, I visited Stockingford Academy, one of the schools benefiting from the announcements today, and heard that their dedicated team and the challenges they faced. In this year's, only 7% of the 75 children are on track. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that this provision will transform high deprivation places that are already facing 46% of their population in high debt?
Secretary of State.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and it takes me back to June last year when, with my honourable friend, who was at that point Labour's parliamentary candidate, we launched Labour's plan to deliver more school-based nurseries. And today, Madam Deputy Speaker, coming out of that plan, we announced the action that parents in this country voted for.
Long questions are just going to prevent your colleagues getting in, so please keep them short. Sean Woodcock.
Deputy Speaker, in response to my honourable friend Member for Bootle, I actually think there's fewer members on the benches opposite than there are pages in the book The Very Hungry Caterpillar, which says everything about where they're coming from. Mr Speaker, I'm really grateful to the Secretary of State for her statement and for the fact that my constituency of Banbury, the town of Chipping Norton, will be getting one of the first 300 announced today. Does she find it hard, though, like me, to take lectures from the parties opposite when it comes to the issue of provision of childcare?
Secretary of State.
Madam Deputy Speaker, yes, it is this Labour government that is getting on and delivering the childcare places that parents across our country want to see, including in his constituency in Banbury. And I know how hard he works for his constituents to make sure their voices are heard in this place, a real champion for local families. And I want to make sure, together working with him and colleagues right across this House, we deliver better life chances for all of our children.
Tristan Osborne.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. According to the IFS School Business Report, early years education is vital for children's development. So can I welcome Horsted Infant School and 2 others in Medway and 5 others in Kent announced today? Does the Minister agree with me that this investment, coupled with that given by Labour councils across the country in school streets programmes, will create a true learning environment fit for purpose?
Secretary.
I join with my honourable friend, and I welcome the important contribution that Horsted and his constituency will be playing as a part of this scheme. I agree we have to do a lot more as a country to make sure that all of our children get a brilliant range of experiences, including in their early years, with the highest quality provision. And today's announcement takes us a step further forward to that reality.
James Aston.
Speaker, the Secretary of State said in her announcement that many of these school-based nurseries will be in places with the greatest need. That's certainly the case in my constituency, and I'm very grateful that Portway Primary in West Ham has been included. I have said in this House before that my constituents don't lack ambition, they lack opportunity, and I think education is the golden ticket to open that opportunity. Could the Secretary of State therefore agree with me that nurseries not only provide opportunities for children but for adults, and could she assure us that as the programme is rolled out, the focus will remain on tackling those areas of need, not just educational but economic and other forms of deprivation too?
The expanded provision at Portway in his constituency will make a big difference, as he says, to supporting parents with work opportunities, to have more money in their pockets, to take on the hours that suit them. But critically, it will allow us to provide more support for children, including those from disadvantaged backgrounds and including right across his constituency.
Helen Moon.
Whereas, Madam Deputy Speaker, Tralee Primary School sits at the heart of my Campbell, Redruth and Hale constituency. It's surrounded by an area that suffers from profound levels of poverty and deprivation. If ever there was an area that needed some good news on early years, it is this, after the shameful neglect by the previous government. Does the Minister agree with me that new childcare places in new and expanded nurseries, including Tralee Primary School, will help children from the most deprived backgrounds achieve the best start in life after life chances of children from deprived backgrounds were ignored by the party opposite for years?
Madam Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend raises an important point about the impact that this will have. On average, 40% of the overall gap between disadvantaged 16-year-olds and their peers has already emerged by the age of 5. That is why it is critical that we invest in the early years, where we give more children the best possible start in life. And today's announcement will create much-needed quality early years provision and places, including in his constituency.
Ram Carling.
I enormously welcome the government's decision to introduce these 300 new government-funded school-based nurseries. Particularly delighted that one of them will be in the Hampton Vale Primary School in my North West Cambridgeshire constituency. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that these new nurseries will make a real difference to families in my constituency and across the country by saving them up to £7,500?
Secretary of State.
Yes, Madam Deputy Speaker, the announcement today will support parents to save up to £7,500 a year. It will put more money back into parents' pockets, and taken together with our commitment to roll out 750 free breakfast clubs from later on this month, this is a Labour government that is on the side of working parents.
Josh Newbury.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The announcement of a new school-based nursery at the Heath Hayes Primary Academy in my Cannock Chase constituency is very welcome and shows that this Labour government is keeping its promises and delivering for parents and children. With capacity being very stretched in Heath Hayes, this capital investment is very welcome. As a parent of a child who benefited hugely from a school nursery, would my right honourable friend agree that school-based nurseries set children up perfectly for going into reception?
I agree with my honourable friend, and I've seen for myself the impact it has often for parents where they already have older children at the school. It makes that eases that start in reception year from nursery into reception. It sets up children to succeed. It allows staff, importantly, to build those relationships with parents and with families, and also to identify if there are problems that are developing critically in areas like SEND, where the earlier that we spot problems, the earlier we can intervene and put in place the support that's required.
Dave Robertson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Secretary of State for her announcement today, because this is an investment in early years, which is an investment in the future of our communities. And in my Lichfield constituency, an investment of hundreds of thousands of pounds at Spring Hill Primary Academy in Burntwood, Boney Hay Primary Academy in Burntwood, and St Stephen's Primary in Fradley. These schools do amazing work in supporting the next generation. This money will be used to renovate facilities, give children a better environment to start their learning in, expand the number of places and help provide that 30 hours of free childcare that working parents so desperately need. Can I put on record my thanks for these schools, and can I ask if the Secretary of State will join me in visiting schools and celebrating the wonderful work that he's done?
Just say yes, Secretary of State.
I will do my very best to make a visit to Lichfield and see the fantastic provision, and critically to see the brilliant work that he is doing to champion local schools and nurseries in his constituency.
Marcus Campbell-Savers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On these benches, we recognise that school-based childcare offers some of the best childcare. And I welcome the statement from the Secretary of State today, which means the Government will be supporting the expansion of the rural nursery at Paddle School near Cockermouth. Could the Secretary of State share with the House how these plans will help parents get into work?
Secretary of State.
My honourable friend knows better than most the importance of providing high-quality provision, including in rural communities, to avoid parents having to travel considerable distances. And the announcement today will make a big difference in his constituency and in constituencies across the country. We also saw, through applications to this scheme, real demand. We had over 640 schools applying to take part, so a big demand that's there, and that's something we want to take forward in future phases, including in rural communities.
Josh Simons.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. After a night of little sleep, I'm feeling something that many have said in this chamber before. Being a parent in this country is too exhausting and too expensive. That's why on Friday I'm hosting a coffee morning targeted at dads with former Wigan Warriors players and Andy's Man's Club. It's also why I am so delighted that down the road, Hindley Green Community Primary and Hindley St Peter's will benefit from this government's investment in new nurseries. That is this Labour government investing in working families that I represent. So can I thank the Secretary of State for that and ask her about the timeline for rolling out this scheme to further schools that I represent in my constituency?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for the work that he is doing to support local families, and also the work he is doing to support dads, because becoming a parent for the first time can be a daunting experience for new mothers, but it can also be daunting for fathers too, and they need support as well, so I pay tribute to him. This is the first phase of our announcement, Madam Deputy Speaker. We will draw on the experience of those schools that take part in the first phase as we take forward future phases, and this will create 6,000 new places that will be available, the majority of which will be available from September 2025. That is the difference that a Labour government is making.
Dan Aldridge.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I am so excited to hear about the nursery at St Anne's Church Academy in Weston-super-Mare, especially from the dispatch box today. People like Julian McCallum at Play and Learn in Ewell have shouldered the burdens of the previous government's evisceration of early years and their lack of strategy on this. So would the Secretary of State join me in thanking so many early years practitioners across my constituency and the UK for their tireless work to give our children the best start possible?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I congratulate the amazing early years workforce and our education workforce in Weston-super-Mare and across our country. They are the people that make the biggest difference in the settings to children. Important as capital is, and today gives us the opportunity to create those places, it is the people that deliver for our children and support them in their earliest years that make the biggest difference, and for that they deserve our praise.
David Williams.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We started out with 6 honourable members on the benches opposite. Divided by 2, that's what's left now. And perhaps, given their track record in this field, the rest have been put in detention for the rest of the day. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm so proud to see that Smallthorne Primary Academy in my constituency of Stoke-on-Trent North and Kidsgrove has been selected for a new school-based nursery. Will the Secretary of State agree with me that such nurseries are vital in places like Smallthorne, not only for the childcare they provide, but to help with school readiness, for closing the developmental gap early on, and for giving every single child the best start in life?
My honourable friend is absolutely right about the difference that early years provision makes and the difference it makes not just in those crucial early years but right throughout children's lives too. The evidence could not be clearer, and I'm delighted that in Smallthorne and in many communities across our country more children will have the opportunity to benefit from high quality early years provision, critical to their life chances but also really important for parents in his constituency as well.
Noah Law.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm sure that the families and children of Pondu Primary School are delighted to welcome the investment in the nursery announced by the Secretary of State today, not least because Central St Austell has sadly become one of the second most deprived ward in the whole of Cornwall. So what impact does the Secretary of State expect this to have on that chances of those children living in deprived families in life?
Secretary of State.
Madam Deputy Speaker, we know that children from more disadvantaged backgrounds have the most to benefit from high quality early education, and they benefit the most when that starts earlier. And we know also alongside that so much of the overall gap has already opened up, and that 40% of the overall gap between disadvantaged 16-year-olds and their peers has already emerged by the age of 5. That's why it is essential that we do more to support children and families when they are younger. It is right for those children, it is right for families, but it is also an investment in our country's future.
Andrew Pace.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Looking at the benches opposite, I bet the front bench are glad this is a debate about nurseries rather than school attendance. Can I thank the Secretary of State for joining me in Peterborough earlier this week to meet the fantastic pupils, parents and staff at Fallbridge Academy who are excelling in giving great education to students in my constituency. Will she join me in congratulating and paying tribute to Ben Erskine and the brilliant staff team at that school? And does she agree with me that with leadership, a relentless focus on standards, and with the resources we're seeing in today's announcement, there is absolutely nothing that can hold back the ambition of working class communities like mine?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I was delighted to join my honourable friend in visiting Fallbridge and to meet with the brilliant staff team that are doing so much to support all children in that community to achieve all that they are capable of, that there should be no ceiling on their ambition and on their aspiration, including in working class communities. And with my honourable friend as their Member of Parliament, I know he will continue to champion his constituency, his community, and ensure that alongside our plan for change, we deliver a country where background is no barrier to getting on in life and where we break that link between background and success.
Peter Swallow.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I warmly welcome the news that Upminster Primary School in Sandhurst has been awarded funding to expand its school-based nursery? And will the Secretary of State set out what this will mean for Labour's commitment to delivering better, top-quality childcare for families across my constituency and across the country?
Secretary of State.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. We want to make sure as a government, as a Labour government, that families are able to access childcare support because it is important in terms of families' work choices, but critically around children's development as well. It's why we have set ourselves an ambitious target of ensuring that a record number of children are school ready, and high quality early years provision, including in his constituency, is a critical part of that. But alongside it, this announcement today will put more money back into parents' pockets.
Final question, Michael Wheeler.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I feel like I should possibly declare an interest at this point as the proud dad of a little boy who is literally taking his first steps as our government takes these important steps in a critical area. I welcome the statement and all of the Secretary of State's work in this area, and I particularly welcome the fact that St Stephen's in my constituency of Worsley and Eccles will be home to one of these nurseries. As the Secretary of State well knows, I have long been a champion of available, affordable and accessible childcare, especially for working parents. Does she agree with me that delivering on these aims is a real sign that our government is delivering for children and their parents?
Secretary of State.
Madam Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend is absolutely right, and for many years when we were a party in opposition alongside him, I campaigned to make sure that working parents get the support that they need in order to get on at work, to have good working standards and conditions, and critically that they can access high quality early years provision and childcare. And today's announcement, around £37 million of extra capital investment, including at St Stephen's in his constituency, will make a big difference to working parents in his constituency across our country, but is also an important part of this government's plan for change, breaking that link between background and success.
That is the end of the education statement. I'll let the benches swap over.